Alright, hello everyone. Here we are back for a Paris tutorial here. And first thing that we're going to be doing here is setting up our clubs, potential clubs to be using. So I'm thinking, kind of Guardian 5, Sniper 7, and you really don't need much spin on this hole. For the wood shot, you could get away with a little bit less, but one of the reasons that I kind of have the clubs kind of up a little bit is to make sure that the distance, you have that distance up where you kind of want it, 168, 166. You better get away with a less Guardian. You could probably get away with Guardian too, honestly. So let me throw that in. And aside from that, Cat 1, but maybe Hammerhead's probably actually going to be even a better option than that. So let me throw in Hammerhead, and you're not going to need much of a Hammerhead on this one. Probably just have to have it unlocked. Same with Cat. Doesn't matter how bad your club is, you can still win this hole with some pretty entry-level stuff. So alternatively, there's going to be headwinds in this scenario, and I'm going to cover a couple shots here. The only two clubs that are really going to be worth having, it's going to be really hard if you get a headwind and don't have one of these two options. 6 or 7. However, you can get away with, Extra Mile or a Parc 5 as well. These things are going to be way down here towards the bottom. And you're going to need to kind of land in this bumpy zone, which makes it really interesting because sometimes it bounces, you're going to have perfect ball, perfect aim. Because you could kind of be all over the place, and you'll use max backspin and kind of roll it through in that fashion. And as I mentioned, very interesting shot. It's very, very challenging when you have to pick that as your landing zone, but it can be done. I've actually seen, quite a few actually really solid shots from those, so it can be done, but it's just not what you want to have to do. So let's take a look here. At a couple spots where I like to go is kind of towards this shadow, towards the right-hand side of the fairway. And I'll bounce here, second hop here, third hop, roll out. Requires very little spin to do that shot. And that's one of the reasons that you can get away with so many clubs here. It's because it doesn't require much spin at all. The only thing that I do require is that you pretty much max right spin it. And depending on how much max right spin you have will kind of dictate the curl that you're going to need to apply, because you're going to have to be a good wind effect player to be able to pull this shot off. So with these side winds, I'm going to go 0 on the wind. You're not going to be able to get away with too many headwind cases. So let's take a look here. We're going to need to kind of split this again, because you'll only be able to do it with kind of a partial. And all the tailwinds, we'll be able to, these are top spin numbers, by the way. And then up here, it's going to be backspin. So, you can start to crank it up a little bit, 0.5, as much as 1 for a full tailwind. And ideally, you're going to land very close to this fringe with 1 backspin. Hopefully not too much into the green. If you land into the green, you kind of messed up your land zone. Probably should have landed shorter. But to actually get the landing zone where you want it, it's going to be highly critical that you, have good visualization of the way that the ball guide expansion is going to happen on this tailwind shot. So let's talk a little bit about the adjustments that I use. Headwind, tailwind. And, the biggest thing in these later tours is having that ball guide offset understanding, or how your ball is going to, the person that does that the best is going to win. I can give you these adjustments all day long. It's not going to do anything to help you unless, you kind of have that conceptual part of it down. So for the side wind, I'll use max plus 20. For the tailwind, I'll also use max plus 20. So both of those I use max plus 20. For the headwind, it really doesn't exist, but there is this slight headwind here. And for that slight headwind, I would recommend probably max plus 25. Just a little bit more of an adjustment. But as I mentioned, for the headwind, we're going to have to kind of change gears a little bit. So ideally, what I like to do is I like to have the Thor's hammer, and I like to land up here towards the fringe, very, very close to the fringe. If your opponent messes up and misses the green, being able to land here is going to be crucial. Apocalypse can't quite land that aggressively. They'll have to back off kind of a little bit. The most that they can aim here is here. And, a lot of guys might try to actually set up to do it here, which will kind of change the way that you have to backspin just slightly. So here, up here, you might use max. Here you might have to take off 1 or so. But it's all, dependent upon wind effect as well. And with these backspin shots, it's really going to just vary. It could be between 7 and 9 bars is what you want right here. But it just depends on how strong it is. Because there'll be times that you only get it down to like 7 or 8 miles per hour. And then other times you get it 14. Well, that's really going to create a very large range for spin potential there. For instance, even if I try to, if I get the biggest wind that I can, for example, and I try to hit this Thor's hammer full backspin shot, it's not even going to make it to the hole. I'd probably have to land it up onto the green. So if I change my land zone and could actually get it up onto the green, but it's very hard to get it up onto the green because as you have to adjust more rings, the ball's just going to kind of resist and you're going to go more towards max club. You might even go into power. Like you're starting to really get out there range-wise when you have to adjust 15 rings on a Thor's hammer 7, for example. So, the way that you're going to have to do this spin is going to kind of vary. For most case, I'm going to use max, which is about 9 some bars. Right, well, it's 9 bars. So what I'll usually use with these side winds is I'll use pretty much full. And in terms of my ring adjustment for the headwind case, I'm pretty much going to play max club for the most part. As I mentioned, though, as it gets towards a longer adjustment, in this case, max might not be enough. So, towards very high tailwinds, I might need to go max plus 20, as much as max plus 20%. And that's going to primarily kind of be kind of an asterisk on this case, where it's kind of straight in the face, or very, very straight. I mean, it doesn't have to be actually dead straight, but if you see most of the wind pointing straight down at you and it's 14 miles per hour, max isn't going to cut it. you're going to have to go well beyond max, probably max plus 20. Even though you're going to, I can show you guys the min line here. So here's kind of your min driver line. Actually, that looks too much. There's no way it's there. I think it's somewhere right around here. So that's pretty much what you're looking at for this one. Overall, very straightforward shot. As I mentioned, with these little isolated cases, you'll have to use max pretty much on the Apocalypse, Extra Mile, and you'll just have to play with that land zone, like up in here. And as I mentioned, the Apoc kind of has 2 different landing zones. It's also wind specific. There'll be times that you can get it up closer to this purple if it's the extreme case. So, just something to be thinking about. Good luck with this hole, guys, and see you guys on the next one.